And here to discuss Biden's presidential run in the upcoming primary is A. Scott Bolden, a former chair of the D.C. Democratic Party and former New York Assistant District Attorney. Welcome, Scott. In the upcoming South Carolina Democratic primary, do you anticipate a significant impact on Joe Biden's trajectory, similar to the decisive victory that he experienced in 2020?
Well, the circumstances are different, but the impact will be the same. He's the president now. He's the incumbent, and he's going to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. What'll be close to look at, and what we really want to see, is what voter turnout is going to be. He's got two competitors who are going to be more of an annoyance than making a real run for him in South Carolina. It's got a large black vote. We know that snapshots of polling has shown that he's losing some black support. I don't really believe that, but South Carolina wants to have a big turnout for black voters and a big victory for him to demonstrate or to rebut what some of those recent pollings are showing. That's what we need to look at for tonight. How big he wins will be important, and how much of the black vote he gets in South Carolina will be even more important.
Yeah, you've pointed to a number of interesting points here. Considering this contested but not competitive primary that is coming up, what do you think the political narrative could be once we see what the voter turnout is like and what the makeup is like?
Well, one of the challenges is both of the candidates, the GOP presumed nominee as well as the Democratic nominee, from polling don't appear to be very popular. South Carolina could rebut that and have a large showing and a large energy behind Joe Biden with his Democratic victory. And I know the South Carolina Democratic State Party certainly wants to show that to rebut those pollings. It'll be very important because we know black voters, brown voters, gay voters, young voters are the base of the Democratic Party and the coalition that put Biden over 4 years ago. He's got to put that coalition back together. And notwithstanding how great the economy is, Americans still aren't feeling it according to polling. And so now is the time, some 11, 10 months out, that he begins to shore up his base, right? Make people feel like the economy is better. And whether it's more money in their pocket or more jobs or whatever it's going to take, he's got to be likable, and he's got to explain to the voters why their life is better now than 4 years ago. That demand, that debate, that advocacy starts right now.
Churches and barbershops, in an effort to try to contact these black voters who traditionally would have voted for him, but are perhaps not as sure this time around, according to polls. Do you think this kind of strategy will be a winning strategy for him?
Well, he's going to have to push back about he only comes around, or the Dems only come around to our black community when they want our vote, and in the interim, they take it for granted. It's really about substance over style. Donald Trump and the Republican Party are never going to get 80, 90% of the black vote. But in certain swing states, if they can swing 5% or 10%, that could make a difference in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan. I think his strategy is right, but it's what he says and how he makes them feel when he goes to those barbershops and those churches and reminds them of the substance and how their life has improved under his leadership.
There are two other major issues that he also could be facing in terms of voters being uncertain about him. We've got this faction within the Democratic Party of voters who support Palestine, and they're protesting his response to the war in Gaza. And then there's also the immigration crisis and people watching closely about how Biden is dealing with that. How can Biden get his message across and pull voters in, and what are the challenges there?
Well, I think if the Hamas-Israeli war could be resolved, that would help him a lot. I mean, many young voters and voters of color identify with Palestinians, and you can't deny the visual and the videos of 10,000 or more innocent Palestinians being killed or affected by this war, notwithstanding Israel's right to seek out Hamas. So he needs to resolve this war or call for a ceasefire, not choosing one side against the other, but for humanitarian reasons. Maybe he does that, maybe he doesn't. In regard to the other issue, he's got to sell his message. He's got to be able to tell them why his leadership is better than Donald Trump's, and he's got to hope that he can convince them. He's got 11 months to do it, but he can win this race, but he's got a lot of work to do.